All right, welcome. Thank you for being here today for the 2024 grant year RAMP application training. My name is Lacey Richards. I am the chair of the RAMP board. Want to introduce, we have several of our board members here with us today. We have Ernie Gonzalez, who's the chair of the Arts and Museums board. We have Kevin Burns, chair of the Recreation and Parks Board. We have several board members online. I hope I've caught most of them. I know that I saw Sunny Wilkinson. She's on the advisory board in Arts and Museums. We also have Jim Craig online. He's part of our Arts and Museums board. Zachary Thomas is here from our Recreation and Parks Board. Dana Gibson from our Arts and Museums board. Did I miss any other? Oh, Sherry Bingham on our advisory board, and also Arts and Museums. We may have a couple more online who've. Oh, Brent. Brent Parkin is also online. Brent Holmes, excuse me. Brent Holmes is also online. He is from our Recreation and Parks Board. So thank you for being here today. Many of you are experienced with RAMP, and some of you are newer to it, but all of us are partners in providing some really wonderful opportunities for our community. Everyone in our community who votes for the RAMP initiative every 10 years is part of that. Everyone who purchases things in Weber County is part of funding that. All of you bringing your wonderful projects in every year really helps us get those funds out doing good in our community and really having a positive impact on the lives of everyone here. So thank you for being here today. Our goal is to have you walk out of here ready to write a wonderful application that communicates your project to the board and helps us get a good idea of what's out there in the community. Before we get started on the RAMP training portion of it, I'm going to turn the time over to Roger Brunker from the Weber County Clerk Auditor's Office, and he's going to share some audit information with all of us. Roger?
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to be real short and sweet because you're going to want the training. I have had the opportunity the last few years to be an auditor for the RAMP grants. What we do is your applications that you turn in once you've completed the project, we go through it, make sure everything is in line. As you are aware, most of you, RAMP is a phenomenal program. It is, the cultural and recreational advantages it brings to Weber County is phenomenal. It's a multi-million-dollar program. We have a lot of money that we deal with, and because of that, we want to make sure that we operate within the legal guidelines as outlined in Utah Code. It is actual part of Utah Code, as well as the county guidelines that we have created to make this process work smoothly and function well. So I'm just going to emphasize a couple of things that we look for when I do an audit. One is you'll be required to file a completion report at the end of your project. That'll be due by June 30th, I think is correct. Okay, so it's due by June 30th, and the project should be completed by then. If for some reason, because we all know things happen, it is not completed, then you are required to file an extension request. And this is saying, hey, we're this far along, we just need a few more months to get this taken care of. Just let us know where you are in that project. It's very rare that the committee would turn down that extension because we want to make sure that you get the time you need to get that taken care of. But so either the completion report, the extension report, and also, one thing that we've had come up once, sometimes, you get into a project and things change a little bit. And there is like an amended project report that you can file. Let me give you a quick example of that because you might be thinking, what does that mean? A few years ago, we had an application that says, hey, we're going to beautify our community. It was a city, and they had bids for trees and landscaping and all that kind of stuff, and it was great. And we say, sure, we're all for making your recreational places and areas more beautiful. But then we had the drought, a couple of years of drought. Well, because of that, they don't want to plant a bunch of trees and vegetation to make it beautiful, so they midway decided to go with rocks and different things that way that didn't need the water. Well, it's a great idea, it's a great plan, and we are all for it. I'm sure the committee would be all for it, but we weren't aware of that. So when I'm doing the audit, all of a sudden I'm looking for the trees and the sod and all of that kind of stuff, the vegetation, and all I've got is, rocks and curbing and gutters, and I'm going, this isn't jiving here. You said you were going to do this. You didn't do this. Why? So if for some reason your plans change, we would really request, actually we require that you put in an amendment to your plan. And if it needs to be, if it's common sense like that, that's great. We'll, Shelley's, I work with her quite closely. It's very obvious it's going to be okay. If there's any question at all, we'll go back to the committee, the RAMP committee, over that, whether it's arts or parks or whatever it is, and they will make a determination, yeah, that's okay, we like that, go ahead, use the money. If not, then we would request the money back, okay? So just make sure one of those 3 items is turned in. Also, please keep clear and comprehensive records of invoices and receipts for the entire project. It's great, actually, what we would love to have. Shelley and I talked about this. If you could file those actually with your completion report, that would be great for us, because then we don't even have to get in touch with you if we pull you for an audit. It's already right there. You've got everything filed. Plus, it's kind of a hassle when a year later we say, hey, by the way, remember that project you did? Can you give me all these receipts and everything that we need on that? If you had it all there with a report, that would be great. If you don't file it with a report, just make sure you have it in a folder somewhere, so when I call or send you an email and say, hey, we're doing an audit on this project, please send me all the documentation I'm requesting. It's just easy to have at hand. Also, and very important, we're stressing this, we all know how great the RAMP projects are. One of the requirements is signage. And we need pictures, copies, whatever it is, of the signage that, this project was funded by RAMP, this park was, done with RAMP funds, and so make sure that signage is there and we have pictures of that signage. And I want to emphasize 2 reasons why we require it. Well, one is because it's required. That's the first reason. Second reason is, as was already stated, RAMP is an elected, we vote on that every 10 years on the ballot. As people see that, this is a great trail, I love this, this was a great event, there was a big banner there that says, hey, RAMP funded this. As people see what RAMP money does and how it really benefits us culturally and recreationally here in Weber County, we love that signage. We love people to be aware of that. So when that vote comes up, they're saying, yeah, oh, definitely, 100%, I am going to support this project or this program. And hopefully then we'd get another 10 years to be able to support that. So basically that's what we do. We just take audits of your projects, not all of them, but we just kind of pull a bunch each year to an audit. So just be prepared that if we call you or contact you, to be able to submit all the documentation that we request, and that all of your ducks are in a row, basically, is what it is. I hope you hear this, and it's probably repetitive. I hope you hear this a few times, probably here in this meeting and your training. But I also hope that your liaison from the committee will also reemphasize that, and I encourage all of the liaisons on the committee, when they meet with you to talk to you about your individual grant projects, that they will also reemphasize the necessity of keeping great records. We don't want to lose this program because of technicalities. So appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Roger. We appreciate the efforts of the Clerk Auditor's Office to keep us all on the right track and make sure that we are keeping these public funds spent the way that they need to be. Next, I'd like to introduce Shelley Hallisey. She is the RAMP Director for Weber County. Also want to thank Stacy Skeen. She's the Commission Liaison. She's running the Zoom meeting, and these 2 ladies keep the entire program running. They're amazing, and as board members, we rely on them a lot. And I know that they are always available for you as applicants as well. If you have questions, things come up as you're going through this process, please reach out. They're here to help you, and we as board members are too. So I will turn the time over to Shelley.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I know a lot of you feel like this is a redundant thing that you do every year, but we do have a little changes, a few changes each year. And also the applications aren't always right. So we keep thinking maybe if we keep training, we'll get really good applications. First, I just want to go over a few quick things. When you signed in, I'm hoping that you put your whole name, first name, last name, and the entity you are here for. Joe won't work because we don't know where Joe is from. And then if you are online, in the chat, again, put your full name, first and last, and which entity you are here for. We want to make sure you get the credit you deserve for being here. Okay, let's get started with our training here. Please give me a little grace. I can be a walking ramp encyclopedia, but I'm not good at this kind of stuff. Okay, ramp. The quality of life in 2004 and then again in 2014, Weber County residents authorized to fund enhancements to recreations, arts, museums, and parks in our community. I'm going to use this, it's a little easier. The investment ramp is funded by a sales tax of 1/10 of 1% or 1 penny for every $10. The average Weber County family invests $12 per year in ramp. That $12 generates more than $3 million per year for community projects. And actually, I need to amend that because it's ended up being about $6 million for the last couple of years. Over $61 million in grants have been invested in our community through ramp. Over 120 nonprofit organizations and municipalities have been able to create amazing projects and programs because of ramp. The ramp tax will be on the ballot again in 2024. Please remember to tell everyone when you're out in the public dealing with people how amazing ramp is, to notice all the signs in our community. And we would love to have another 10 years of ramp. This is the 2024 ramp funding. We are lucky enough this year to have $6,092,000. As you can see, it's broken down. In the majors, there will be a little over $2 million. Arts and museums will each have, let's see, $1,854,000 plus. And this is how that broke down in 2023. I want to go over this a little bit just to make it clear how this works. So we started out last year with $6.5 million. We had some funding left over from prior years. That was for grants that didn't happen, people returned money, things like that. So we ended up with $9 million-ish. That was divided by 3. The majors gets a third. Then the arts museums gets 2/3. Out of that 2/3, first we take the municipal grants, then we take the free summer Saturdays, and then we divide the remaining on that into arts museums and rec and parks. As you can see, even though we had a lot of money, we had a lot in requests. So sometimes it might seem frustrating that you don't get your funding, but just realize that even though your application was amazing, the board agrees it was amazing. They would love to fund everything, but you know, we only have a certain amount of money to go so far. Okay.
Hi.
Hold on.
I am looking for the commission chambers. I am late for our meeting.
If you are on,
you know the front doors.
if you're on, please mute as you come on.
Oh.
Okay. In order to qualify for funding, an applicant must be a Weber County city, entity, or nonprofit organization operating in Weber County. The nonprofit organization must be a resident of Weber County and have met all eligibility requirements for the preceding 3 years. If an organization or program affiliated with a university or college or educational institution, if it is an organization that is program affiliated with a educational institution, the project must serve predominantly the community as opposed to the students and faculty. The institution must also receive less than 50% of its support from government funding. Recreational facility must be publicly owned or operated. That would include campgrounds, docks, marinas, golf course, playground, athletic field, gymnasium, swimming pool, trail system, park, or other facilities used for recreational purposes. A cultural facility must also be publicly owned or operated. That would include a theater, museum, art center, music hall, or other cultural organization or arts facilities. Cultural organizations. This is for the programming. A private nonprofit organization, institute, or administrative administrative unit, or a municipal or county cultural council. You can see those things listed on the side: natural history, art, music, theater, dance, literature, motion pictures, storytelling, history, natural history, art, music, theater, dance. Lacey, this is where Lacey's going to pick up here for a minute.
All right, thank you, Shelley. All right, anyone a little bit confused? Hopefully not too much, but if you are, we'll take questions at the end, and we're here to walk you through all that. So criteria for funding: we want you to be successful. You are the way that these ramp dollars get out doing good in the community, so we want to be upfront with you about ways to do that. First of all, the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate that you meet eligibility requirements. If you've been applying for ramp for the last 20 years, we don't need your whole IRS paperwork again this year. We'll save a tree instead of having to do a grant to plant one. Just know that, if you've been applying forever and we've seen it, you don't have to put it in every packet. But if you are a newer entity and we haven't seen that before, you do need to provide that IRS nonprofit status paperwork. Funded facilities have to be physically located in Weber County. Otherwise, they are not eligible. If possible, it's great if those funds are spent with vendors in Weber County, but that is not an absolute requirement. Preference. Ernie's going to go over the score sheet a little bit later, but you'll see that there are some points available for collaboration. One of the ways you can do that is to collaborate with other entities on doing some joint projects where one is taking the lead, but other entities in the community are helping support that, and maybe giving some financial support to that as well. The applying entities are also encouraged to raise additional monies. Ramp funding is not meant to be the first money in on projects. Ramp funding is meant to go for projects that are well thought out, well down the planning pathway, and ready to go. So if you have an idea, that's great. When it comes to ramp, it needs to be a project, not just an idea. So ramp is not meant to be first money in on that. If you go out and get other grants, that shows that you're down that path of planning and that it's something that's really going to go. We know that things happen. Sometimes funding comes back when a project just doesn't work out, but that means that that funding wasn't available for some other good project that year, that it could have been out with those dollars benefiting today's residents. So we really ask that you keep that in mind when you're applying, that it's not just a great idea, that it's a planned out, well planned out project. Applying entities must provide for perpetual maintenance and operating funding for facilities. So for instance, if it's a municipality and you're going to put in a great new park, you're not going to put in for a grant every year to maintain that park. That's going to be your responsibility going forward. All funded projects must be made available for all Weber County residents. It's fine if a non-discriminatory user fee that's reasonable is charged for the use of the facilities, but it can't be limited access. This is meant to benefit Weber County residents as a whole. The total amount of the grant money must be spent on the funded project. If you end up with extra, wouldn't it be nice if prices went down? But if you end up with extra, it needs to come back into the ramp coffers. It can't just be reallocated to another project. Even if it's worthy, it has to be within the parameters of what you applied for. One thing that is confusing every year that we're hoping to get ahead of this year, if you are an entity that usually applies to the Rec and Parks section of ramp, and you are wanting to do something that is programming versus a physical facility, there is no way under the statute to fund programming for Rec and Parks. So if you are having a fantastic recreational programming thing, like maybe a trail festival or maybe some kind of natural history thing in the field, it needs to come in under arts and museums. That's coming in under that natural history component. So please check the box for arts and museums. The trick with that is going to be that if you have only done Rec and Parks in the past, you need to look ahead of time, way ahead of time like now, at your organization's mission statement and make sure that it includes that natural history component or that programming component in your mission statement. You can't just make up a new mission statement for the application. You need to have time to take that to your board and have the conversation with your organization about, is this something we want to do? Do we want to amend and broaden our mission statement to do this type of programming? If you do, that's great. That's up to you. But that needs to be an official action that's taken before you bring your application in. Any questions on that piece? Because that's confusing every year. Okay, great. All right, what RAMP doesn't fund? RAMP does not fund contingency fees, insurance, architecture, studies, employee salaries, prizes, trophies, refreshments, fireworks, food items, city marquee or message boards, or fundraisers. The fundraiser one might seem straightforward, but that every year we get some that kind of get caught up in that of, you're going to fund this fantastic fundraiser, and then the fundraiser is going to fund this project. That's not what the purpose of RAMP is. Please just bring in your fantastic project and ask us to fund the project, not the fundraiser to fund the project. Stipends are eligible for special guest performers, teachers, musicians, employees, or regular performers with your organization are not eligible to be paid using RAMP funds. That can be a match, but it is not eligible to be paid with RAMP funds. Project planning, design, and architecture, again, that's fine if you use that as a match. That's great evidence that you've done your homework and it's not just an idea, it's a project, but that can't be paid for with RAMP funding. Any RAMP money awarded and not used, as outlined in your budget, has to be returned to the county. We've covered that. Costs such as police presence, fire department, trash pickup, city workers, please be reasonable on this one. We know that there are some extraordinary costs that go into having, you know, a big festival, a big event, but if your parks department mows the grass every Wednesday, you need to just pay them to mow the grass that Wednesday. Please don't bring it in and say, we mowed the grass just for the festival. Well, you mow the grass every Wednesday. So there are lots of things that you can use as a match, that you can use to show support, but please keep it reasonable and don't include your ordinary costs of running your organization. That not only isn't allowed, it doesn't present a very good sense that the project has enough to support it without that. RAMP, we talked about RAMP not being the first funding on a project. If you don't have everything, you don't have to have the funds in hand from other grants. But, you know, for instance, a lot of organizations say every year we apply to Organization X and they fund this project. We're confident that they will again this year. You know, we have a track record, we have the application, and we know that not all funding cycles line up exactly. So if you come in and say we've applied for it, we're confident we're going to get it, that's fine. It doesn't have to be secured in your hand, but also, it's not impressive. It doesn't help your case to come in and say, if we get the RAMP grant, we're going to go find some other grants to apply for. That planning needs to happen before you come to RAMP. And one more thing, rodeos. This is another one that has kind of been confusing for some people. Rodeos, if you want to apply for a rodeo, that's great. It needs to come in under arts and museums because that is programming. Programming is not eligible under the rec and parks. Parades, we don't fund parades. If you have a specific, for example, an entry in a parade, you know, that's historical, that's expressing that, or maybe fits under one of the arts and museums thing in a different way, that's fine, but we don't fund the parade because that's an event, and that doesn't fit under the RAMP umbrella. All right, RAMP funds cannot be regranted. We love when you collaborate with other entities. Once RAMP funds go to you for the project, you need to administer them, provide that wonderful documentation to Roger and his team that that's been spent as you said it would be. Regranting is not allowed. If you have another entity that wants to cooperate with you, that's great. You can say they're providing 100 volunteer hours. You know, you can use that as part of your match. You can say they're providing the facility, you know, whatever you want to do, but you can't turn around and regrant those funds to them. That doesn't work. And finally, RAMP is never guaranteed. We love having a whole table full of fantastic applications. It means that there's going to be wonderful stuff going out into the community, but also just realize that because of that, it doesn't mean that the board hated your project, doesn't mean it was a bad project. It just means we had a lot of really wonderful projects. There have been years in the past when most things did get funded. That's just how it has worked out with the funding and the number of applications. But please know that it's never a guarantee. Even if you have a wonderful project and we funded it in the past, we don't know what's coming in this year. We just found out how much funding there is. We don't know how much, what the total number of requests are going to be or the total dollar amount of those requests. All right, Shelley.
Thank you, Lacey. Okay, if there's anybody online that's not muted, please mute yourself. going to share me. Let me start this over here. Sorry, my computer has different things in mind than I do. Okay, it's saying Zoom meetings is not responding, and I don't want to lose all of our Zoom people, so I'm just not going to touch it for a minute. So I will just... Oh, we lost. Okay. No, it's still up. You're still up? Okay. It's still not letting me do anything. I'm sorry about that. Okay, we'll go forward anyway. Application deadlines. For major grants, the filing deadline is Friday, January 12th by 5 o'clock p.m. For regular grants, that's arts and museums, rec and parks, January 12th by 5 o'clock p.m. And easy grants, March 22nd, 2024 by 5 o'clock p.m. I want to say we appreciate Roger coming in and giving you an update on the audits. I just want to say one thing. When you get an application, say you are awarded a grant for 2023, the due date is June 30th of 2024. So you actually have a little more than a year to get that done. So your deadline for that would be the following year. Okay. I wish this would work. Dang it. Okay. Include on your ramp grant application the amount you are applying for, whole numbers, no change. We don't need to fund the 33 cents. The type of grant, majors, is for a request of $200,000 or more. Regular requests are for $2,001 up to $199,999, and easies are for $2,000 or less. Pick your category, rec and parks or arts and museums. The mission statement must match the ramp, what ramp stands for, an improvement to the community to make Weber County a better place for everyone to live, work, and play. The project name, please don't make it the same name as your project last year. If it is for, let's say, Washington Terrace Park, don't make next year Washington Terrace Park. At least add phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, so we know the difference when we're getting reports. Easy grant applications must include a summary and a budget. And one thing that is new and different this year is that the ramp budget that is supplied online is required. If you are online, please make sure you're muted. I can't mute you. Thank you. Kevin, do you want to go over the budget sheet real quick?
Did they get one in their packet?
They did. There was copies of the budget on the back table, and since I can't pull it up here, I'm going to work on this for a minute while you're...
All right. Since it won't be on the screen, I'll need the glasses, so comes the old side. If we're holding the back of them, I might be able to see it. Okay, so you all have this ramp budget in your packet.
Wait, did we just lose people?
Oh, sorry. So you have this ramp pack budget form in your pack. Itemized budget and funding allocation projection. So the top piece is your expenses. Really basic, lump them together, give us a good description of what your project, what it's going to cost to do. And then in the revenues, it really just breaks down to give us a list of how you're funding it, whether it's private donations, other tax entities, like the city's going to match part of a ramp grant. Just so you know, for the ramp board, we really don't like that. We know it happens, but we really like the collaboration with the nonprofits. As much private money as you can bring into these projects is really what we're after. But this form is really simple. It was developed so a guy like me can understand it when we're reviewing it, and you don't have to have an accounting degree to put this together. So any questions on that form in front of you? Has anyone not used this form in the past? Anyone not? Yes, sir. Not used it in the past, just, okay. Just an old farm boy. Yes, sir. I might have heard that. So revenues would be your, how are you funding your project? You're going to develop a park, and you're going to have $200,000 worth of playground equipment, and you want $100,000 from ramp, and then the other $100,000 has to come from someplace. That's what goes into that piece to show us what those other funding sources might be. Does that help you, old farm boy? All right. Might have known him for a minute. Any other questions on this form? Shelley, was there anything else you wanted me to touch? Oh, sorry. Hand over here.
I just wanted to make sure, did you say that the revenue and the expenses are equal? Because I know that's been an issue in the past.
Yes, for the ramp funding project, yes. Yeah, they should balance out. And so that's why it's this project or this form is so easy, because it's right there in front of you to kind of balance. Some folks, some of the larger entities get real fancy with their big annual budget sheets, and they can kind of get mixed up. So that's why we've required this form this year. We ran into that a little bit last year. We're trying to match up some of those expenses and revenues. Shelley, was there anything else you wanted me to touch on with that? You're good? Okay. Any more questions? Great.
All right. Well, we're letting Shelley and Stacy work on that for a minute. Just one more thing with your applications. Shelley and Stacy are fantastic and amazing. Please don't take advantage of them by dumping a box of papers on their desks at 4:59 on January 12th that aren't collated or stapled or put together into the 15 copies. They're not going to take that. And if they do, I'll tell them again that they really shouldn't. So please bring it ready to go, collated, stapled. I recognize and I'm sympathetic to the impulse to make it look beautiful with cover letters and folders and binders, and please don't do that. We have to fit all of them into a file box that goes home with every board member. To spend hours at their kitchen table going over these. They don't fit if they're in those files and folders, and just staple them right here with your application on the front. Don't put anything in front of it. We just need to, that's where we're going to have your application number, your name, and please have it in order and stapled. A couple more budget things. Kevin, thank you for hitting that. We know that you're going to have questions when you get home and actually start filling this out. So please give us a call if you do. The template is available on the RAMP website, through the county website. You can download it in Excel. It'll download in Sheets for you if you're more comfortable with that. The big things to remember are, thanks for reminding us, your total expenses and your total revenues / funding sources, that amount needs to be the same on both of those. If it's not, something's not right. If you can't figure it out and you just are sure that the form is wrong, give us a call and we'll help you understand the way that the thinking went into making the template. When we as a board, we usually have 10, 12-hour days on some of these anyway going over it. If we have to stop and all start doing math on our calculators trying to figure out how you got to your budget, that's not helpful. So this is an attempt to make it easier for all of us. So if you have questions along the way, don't wait till the last minute. Start playing with it. If you have questions, give one of us a call and we will help you with it. One thing that does come up is questions about competitive bids and estimates. Municipalities, we know that a lot of times you're going through state contract. We know that there's one price on state contract. You don't have to go get competitive bids in that case. But, if you're saying I'm sending out 500 postcards for the event and I'm asking for ramp funding for it, we need to see that you went and tried to get the best price on that. So please do make sure that you're submitting those competitive bids and cost estimates. Yes, you can use in-kind donations and volunteer work. Volunteer hours, it doesn't matter if it's the Cub Scouts helping or if you have an architect who's been kind enough to donate his or her time to help you with planning. That comes in at, is it $20 an hour, no matter who's doing that. So that's something that a lot of times liaisons in the past have had to go back and have you recalculate your budgets. Please just make a note of it now. in-kind volunteer hours can be counted at $20 an hour. Do you have anything before the wrap-up here? Okay. Yeah, no, Ernie's going to do his in just a minute. So Ernie's going to go over the score sheet with you in just a minute. There's a copy on the back table. If you don't have one, you're going to want one of those for that portion. Just a couple more things before we get to that. As Shelley mentioned, completion reports are due the following year on June 30th. So you have approximately 14 months to get the project done, have all your paperwork all ready for Roger, organized, ready to go, and get that completion report in on time. There is a penalty on the score sheet if you fail an audit or if you don't have those completion reports or extension reports done on time. That's not done to be punitive. That's done because we all deeply feel the responsibility that we have to have these public funds expended expeditiously and appropriately. So there is a penalty on the score sheet if that's not done, so please keep that in mind and plan ahead. Points are deducted for those late reports if you don't turn in a report or failed audits. Late reports will not be accepted after the next year's applications are due. That's the absolute cutoff for those. So you could still get partial credit for a late report, but once we start taking applications for the next year, that opportunity has expired. Non-tax dollar collaboration, that's something that questions come up about once in a while. Like Kevin mentioned, we know that especially in the municipal model, a lot of times your matching dollars are coming out of a general fund, maybe they're coming out of a parks impact fee, that's totally fine. But a way that we show that you demonstrate that you have that community support is maybe you've gone out and you have a business that's going to donate and have their name on the scoreboard. Or you have a group that's saying, yes, this programming, this arts programming is so important to us in the community that we're going to provide 20 volunteer hours toward it. So please make sure that you are capturing those things on your budget. It not only shows where your dollars are coming from, but it also shows that community support, and that's going to be reflected as Ernie goes over the score sheet with you. We know that there are extenuating circumstances. Sometimes you need to file that extension report. You are allowed to file one-year extension report. So in no case can the project go past that 26-ish months. All right, each entity, you can turn in one application for a major grant. You can turn in up to 3 applications in Parks and Rec, up to 3 in arts and museums, and up to 3 easy grant applications. 2 more important points before we wrap up. Multi-phase projects. So sometimes, especially when we have, this is mostly for cities because it has to be publicly owned, but if you're bringing in a park project, someone in your community donated 30 acres for a park, or you've gone out and acquired, this fantastic 25 acres for a park, and you're only going to apply for phase 1 this year, you can use the land that sits under that phase, the value of that land, as a match on your application, as matching funds. Now, while recognizing the highest and best use doctrine for land use, for the case of matching funds for RAMP, we have a very specific procedure that you need to follow in order to claim that land as a match. So you need to go onto the county tax records and see what the value of that land is. If for some reason that land has a building on it, maybe you are building something next to your city sports complex or something that already has improvements on it and it's valued that way, please contact the assessor's office. They can help you subtract the cost of those improvements. What we're looking for is just the cost of the land under the footprint of that phase that you are applying for this year. The only exception to that would be if you went out and purchased the land just for this project and you've got your little receipt that says, here's the receipt where we purchased this 10 acres for the project we're coming in for, and you can show that, then you can use that as the match value on that. Any questions on that? That one has been confusing for you and for us in the past, so we're trying to make it easier for everybody. If questions come up as you're doing it, please give us a call and we'll walk you through it. Grant writers, you are welcome to use a grant writer if you would like to. In no way is it required. We have the majority of our successful grants every year are written by someone within the entity themselves. If you do choose to use a grant writer, please review that application and know it as well as if you had written it yourself. You need to keep a copy of the application, and you or someone in your organization needs to be the primary contact person listed on that application. You are welcome to put the grant writer as the secondary contact, but we will be reaching out to you to learn about your organization and your project that you're applying for. It gets really frustrating when we reach out and aren't able to reach someone and the only contact on there is the grant writer and the entity doesn't know that we're trying to reach them. So you need to be the primary contact. You need to know that application in and out like you'd written it yourself. It's not a super complicated application, so you know, again, if you want to hire one, that's fine, but if you want to write it yourself, that's fine. Either way, you need to know it like you did. All right, and then I think that is it. Oh, sorry, one more thing. It's very exciting to get that phone call from your liaison that says, hey, we're so excited to tell you that your project funded, watch for your contract in the mail. When that contract comes from the county, you need to sign it and send it back in or you're not going to get your money. That seems pretty straightforward, but every year we chase a lot of that and they kind of fall by the wayside. We know that there's a lot of turnover in all of your entities for different reasons. You know, we know that's just the nature of these smaller nonprofits. Sometimes the entities that are writing them, we know that that happens. But please make sure that you're not the only person in your organization who knows about this grant, knows that there's a report due on June 30th. We feel for you when you don't get it in, but it doesn't mean that you are exempt from that point deduction that's really going to impact your ability to get funding the next year. So that's just something else to remember. Okay, Ernie is going to review the score sheet and how you can really help yourself out by having someone who knows nothing about your grant taking a look at it and making sure that it makes sense to them.
Does everybody have a copy of the score sheets? Okay. So just kind of go over a few things. If you look at the very header part where the liaison has full information at the top, there's 3 parts there that we kind of look at. We look at how much you've requested. We do take a look at the past year's funding, so we have an idea of whether you've been funded in the past or not. Then based on your numbers, we kind of take a look at the estimated number of attendees and look at the cost ratios. Cost ratios can be tricky. Some are going to be a little more evenly. Some projects may be smaller, but the numbers may be higher. That doesn't necessarily mean you won't qualify. It just means that we have to look at it in terms of what the value of it is based on the crowd that you're trying to fund it for. But we do take a look at that. As you'll notice, we break the scoring down into 4 different components on the score sheet: the value to the community, collaboration within the community, cost and performance risk analysis, and the general summary. But the part that you probably need to pay the most attention to are the first 2, the value to the community and collaboration in the community, because that accounts for about 60% of your points. So that's where you're going to get your points on there. And we do take a look at it, and if you notice, it is broken down into some percentages that we take a look at that we're doing there, and when we do it, those are the numbers we use to determine where you score in terms of meeting, especially on the second item for value to the community. Does project have matching funds? It breaks it down to the percentages we look at for you to get your points. One thing I'd suggest is that we have seen applications in the past that haven't taken advantage of in-kind. That little item can be the difference between being on the bubble for funding or not funding. So if you have an opportunity, take advantage of that, because if you have 3 people that donate 15 hours, that's about 45 hours for them. That could be like $900, and that could make the difference, say, between getting 5 points and 10 points if that increases your percentage and you're have cash, but you're 2 percentage points below being able to do it. That could bump you up to the next category. And that little bump right there is equivalent to about 35 points spread across the 7 people that read the applications. And when you break that down on a percentage, that can make a difference on there. The other thing I'd like to point out is that one thing I've noticed is that we have some of the applications that are targeted communities. And one of the questions I've always had when I look at that sometimes is that you need to ask yourself is, do I have support from the community for which my application is targeting? Since I'm Hispanic, I'll pick on the Hispanic and hopefully not get in any type of trouble. But if I'm going to do something in that community and I show all kinds of public funding, it would be nice to write down some businesses that were within the Hispanic community that show you've actually reached out to the community in which you're going to be doing it for. And write down some of those, because that kind of is an indication that you've actually reached out to the community that you're actually looking to do it for. I haven't seen a lot on there where it actually specifies that, but that's just maybe something to keep in mind if that's the case. And then one of the things to take a look at, I'd invite you to go down to under cost and performance. One of them says, does the applicant show evidence of adequate planning, project design, budgeting, and project management? I mention that because oftentimes when we're going through in the scoring, we may have questions on an application, and if your liaison brings up a point or something for you to help you better do it, take advantage of what they ask you and try and get it, because on average, they can have 5 to 8 projects, depending on how many, or anywhere from 5 to 10 projects, depending on how many applications we may get. And
If you are not muted, please mute. I can't find who it is. Please mute yourself.
And if your liaison has to keep going back and asking for information, one, that's frustrating for the liaison getting the information, but that also can raise a question when it comes to scoring. Did you really take the time to thoroughly make sure you had everything correct before you turned it in? So right there, in a way, you've kind of put a little, it creates question. And we don't want to have to make a judgment based on question for kind of the feel we get. We'd like to have it all basically presented so that when we do it, it's based on what you've turned in. And then lastly, I was just going to reiterate kind of what Shelley says. Please make sure you identify your organization on the roll sheet, because that's an easy 10 points to get rather than the minus 10 points. And then they've already kind of mentioned if you have your follow-up reports or you're in part of an audit, get your stuff in time. The board members do not take off points for that, but when we do review applications, we are informed if there are deductions for those things that have not been met when they've been asked to turn in, and when we're notified of those things, we have to take the points off. That's not a choice we have. So just keep those in mind. Are there any questions on kind of going through and scoring on the budgeting or on the and then one other thing I'd like to say, when you get your applications and we put the little boxes that are maybe about 2 inches high and about 8 inches long, please don't use size 6 font, size 5 font and try and fit everything in there, because I'll be perfectly honest with you. If I have to try and read it more than 3 times, I'm probably going to skip it. And if you have important information in there, I'm going to look elsewhere on the application. If you can't fit it all in there, just please see addendum or see an attachment. We'll more than gladly read 12 font rather than that, because many of us do have bifocals, and I don't need a magnifying glass to help me. So please be mindful of us, especially when we're reviewing it. For instance, if we have to review 55 applications, that's a lot of applications. So the more helpful you can be at responding to the points and scoring questions that your liaison has, the easier it is, because they're the primary point. The rest of us do read the projects we're not assigned and review them too, but the liaison presents your primary purpose. And if the more they can explain and clarify what's going on with the least amount of questions, that means that we can more quickly get by your application. And the other thing I'd make is make sure on the day that you know that a major project is meeting, if you've turned one in, you have whoever's designated on there available in case there's a phone call. Arts and museums, parks and recs, make sure that you have somebody from your organization readily available. We have had times where we've had to make calls and got not a response back from anybody, and we've had to make a judgment call. We'd prefer not to make a judgment call. We'd rather have you tell us exactly what, so you can get the maximum benefit of our time at reviewing your application and get the questions answered. Is there anything, anybody have any questions or anything? You may come in person. You would be an observant at the meeting on there, and there wouldn't be any, and we could ask you questions if you need to clarify, but as far as any comments or anything about the thing, you wouldn't be able to make any on those unless it was your direct project. Well, the in-kind is basically the number of people you have involved that are donating their hours free of cost for you, is what I would understand is what the in-kind would mean on there. And in that case, it would be $20 for those hours.
We've done it across the board like that just because it becomes really difficult for the board members. So if you have a donation of any person with hours, it's $20 regardless.
Yeah, Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, just to clarify, if it's a service like, you've got someone coming in and they're going to go run their dump truck for you, or, they're going to go design it for you and you have an invoice, that is different than saying, at my job, I make $100 an hour, so I'm out here shoveling. You don't get them at $100 an hour. Yeah. And then it needs to be an actual service for that project, is the way that we've dealt with it before. Right, where you have an invoice and they would bid out and say, it's going to cost you $20,000 for this, but we are going to donate half of it, or something like that.
So like, for instance, last year, or a couple years ago, this wasn't we with the pickleball project, we had an engineer who did not charge us, but he donated the renderings for the project, and the value of the renderings was X, Y, Z.
Because you have to have engineering done for the project.
It wasn't charged or what he would charge for an hour, he would charge us, but the value of the engineering drawings was.
Yeah, because it was like a package that you would buy from them. Yeah, that's very different than saying, I'm worth more than the Cub Scout. Yeah, Mayor.
So, time from staff as opposed to volunteers.
So that one gets a little tricky with city staff. Again, RAMP doesn't pay any salaries or wages for city staff. If you're going to use it as a match, it has to be truly a discrete amount. So it has to be, if we didn't have the rodeo this night, we wouldn't be paying 10 hours of overtime for this employee whose overtime rate is X.
It doesn't have to be outside of the regular normal hours.
Outside of their normal duties. So because they mow the park on Wednesdays, sorry, they're going to mow it whether or not you're having a city celebration that night. But yes, if you're paying overtime because you have a celebration and you have to pay them to come in on Sunday morning and pick up the park, then yes, that's an actual cost that you could use as a match.
But what if they're bringing in and working dirt, for instance? They wouldn't be working that dirt normally.
So, but if they are working for the city and that's just their assignment that day, then that's a normal city cost. If you've got them on salary and that day you're sending them to the park to work dirt, that's just a cost of having them on salary. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yes. Right, so I'm going to restate that for the people online so they can hear. So the question was, if you're doing like demo of an old restroom and you're applying for a RAMP grant for the new one, would that count? If you have people at work that day and they're going to work somewhere and you're going to pay them somewhere, that's different than saying, okay, it's overtime, it's extra, we had to get extra workers to come in to do that. Does that make sense? But if you had to go rent equipment just for demoing, then yes, that's an extraordinary cost. Thank you. Shelley has a couple more things, and then we will take any more questions.
Okay, I just want to first apologize for the technical difficulties. If anybody wants a copy of the PowerPoint slide that Zoom didn't like, I'm happy to send it out, just let me know. Also, the budget sheet is available online, so if you just go to the Weber County website, go down the little side thing there to RAMP. It's on that page. Also, this year, the application, you can save it to your computer. You can fill it out. It'll save the words in the application. That's a new thing this year. Very convenient, so much nicer. And I think that's all I had. So, does anybody have any other questions? We had one question online. Somebody asked if volunteer hours were revenue or expense.
So, yeah, this is something that people get a little bit confused about. If you're going to have it on the bottom, on your revenue or the way that you cover your cost, you need to have it on the top as well. So on the top, you would say it's going to take 10 man-hours at $20 an hour to dig this hole in the, that the volunteers are coming out to do. And then on the bottom, you're going to say, we have people donating 10 man-hours at $20 an hour. And then those line items are going to cancel out to make it so your amounts match up. Yeah, that was a great question. Thank you for asking that. Yes?
So earlier you said that for Parks and Recreation programming, you could use arts and museums under natural history?
That was the example, yes. So, for instance, if you have an organization whose main focus is trail maintenance, trail building, that kind of thing, but they want to have a trail festival where they're getting people out teaching, these are the plants to look for as you're out on the trails. Here are some animal footprints to look for. RAMP does not, by statute, does not cover programming under Parks and Rec. So they would cover building the trail, but they wouldn't cover the programming on the trail. So that would need to come in under the arts and museums piece because that's more natural history. However, that organization would need to make sure that their mission, if you're on Zoom, will you make sure you're muted, please? So you would need to make sure that your mission statement didn't just say, we build trails for Weber County. It would need to go through your board and be revised to say something like, we build trails and educate people on how to enjoy them in Weber County through natural history.
You have to include, you have to include arts or cultural or something in your mission statement. And programming in recreation cannot be Little League football or anything like that. It has to be like a festival or something that is art related.
Thanks for that clarification, Shelley. Yeah, it's rare. We don't see a lot of it, but it's come up enough the last couple of years that we just wanted to clarify for people that we see rodeos and we see trail festivals. Maybe there's something out there we haven't seen yet, but it would need to fall under that cultural heritage like a rodeo or natural history like a, here's your little field guide and we have a naturalist out here to talk to you before you go out for your hike today. Yes, Sherry.
Okay, just so I clarify for myself. So
yes.
I have an employee that works on a Saturday
Mm-hmm.
and gets something prepared for a festival.
Yes.
They normally get paid $30 an hour, but they get paid time and a half. So
Yes.
we can actually count $45 an hour, or do we count them as the 20 like we're doing across the board? Because that's, I think, before we kind of just all did 20, because
Mm-hmm.
then if not, you may have an employee that says, well, we're paying them $30, now we have to pay them 45, or you have an employee that maybe normally
Mm-hmm.
is a manager that gets paid
Yep.
60, now we're paying them 90.
Yeah, that's been more of a volunteer thing that we've stuck with the 24, but I'll defer to Shelley on that. Matching is fun.
Matching is. Right. So it would be the 45. Mm-hmm. That is a difficult one, and if we've done it, this is why we have training, because we're being trained also.
Can you repeat what she said so we can make it? I couldn't hear what.
So Sherry's question was, if she had somebody at her city that came in and worked on a Saturday, and their regular salary was $30 an hour, but they were there getting overtime, so it would be $45 an hour. Her question is, do we allow the match at $45 an hour, or would they be required to use $20 an hour, like the volunteers? This is not a volunteer, this is an employee. So it's
an actual cost being invoiced to the city.
right. So what I'm saying today is, like I said, we're all being trained, but I'm saying that you would use it as a match at the $45. Volunteers, though, $20 an hour.
Yeah, great question, Sherry. Thank you. Question back here?
I was going to say, it's clear the distinction that I'm hearing is that if it's just a volunteer who's coming out and helping you with whatever the activity is, then it's the $20 an hour.
Yes.
However, if it is a professional who's providing whatever that service is at whatever their rate,
Yes.
and then I would
Yes.
some type of invoice from that person or a time and effort from that person that says, this is my rate per hour of what I would charge. And so that when you have an audit, then you have that distinction.
Yes.
And then also, just going with the auditors as I think about this, is that if you are doing volunteer as your part of your revenue and your expenses, and let's say that you say you're going to have 200 hours of volunteers, then you should have some type of documentation.
Yes, absolutely.
That shows
Mhm.
that the time and effort or a sign-in sheet or something like that, because if you go and get your audit and you say you're going to have $2,000 worth of volunteers, but you have no documentation that shows you had one volunteer come through, that could be like a reason for you to not pass an audit.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, we're in the weeds a little bit, but I appreciate it because these are the kind of questions that we deal with when the applications come in. So I really appreciate y'all bringing up those points. One more thing to the score sheet. I know we're a little past time, but you're welcome to stay and ask questions as long as you would want to with the score sheet. I strongly recommend that you hand your application and a copy of the score sheet to someone in your organization who did not write your grant application. If they can't decipher, I have no idea how much matching funds they have, or I don't know if they have any community support. That's good feedback for you to go back to your application and rewrite some things so that board members who also aren't familiar with your application won't have those same issues as they look at it and try to fill out that score sheet. So that's just a tip to score better if you'd like to take advantage of that. Yes, Mayor.
I was asked your question. I've got somebody texting me.
Great.
And just to clarify, I already know the answer to this, but with state contract, you don't need 3 bids.
Correct, yes. The question was about state contract. If your estimate that you're putting or your bid that you're putting in your application packet is based on state contract, you do not need multiple bids. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Any additional questions? Okay, we're going to check online really fast. In the meantime, thank you all for all the things you do in the community. Being a part of the RAMP board and the RAMP program is such a privilege, just to see all the wonderful things that are being done in our community and all the people who care about the quality of life here in Weber County. It's really an honor to be associated with every one of you here and online, and I appreciate your efforts. So thank you for that.
Okay, one more reminder that we need first and last name and entity on your sign-ins. We will put the RAMP slides on the RAMP website because we were getting a lot of requests, which I understand. And also the budget sheet and the score sheet will also be on the RAMP website. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to call Stacy or I or any of our board members. And I don't see... Yes, and you're welcome to email me at any time.
There's a question from Marshall McGonigal.
Do you want to just read it out?
All right, we've got one more question online.
Do you want to read it out, Stace?
How does in-kind work from volunteers? We're using math. Say the project will cost $400. We are starting with $0. We have 10 volunteer hours, which makes us $200 in-kind dollars. Do we still ask RAMP for the full 400? And RAMP will recognize the in-kind volunteer hours as 50% contribution.
Okay, so question was, if you have a $400 project, for instance, and $200 of those costs are things that you need people to do for you, and you have volunteers covering those $200 of cost, do you still ask RAMP for $400 or do you ask for $200? The answer is no, you ask for $200. The purpose of that budget balancing and taking credit for all of that on in-kind and the volunteer hours is to show what you really need RAMP to help with. So if you've got volunteers covering it, you don't need RAMP money and someone else can use that $200 and we can multiply that impact in the community. All right, anyone else?
Okay, one more thing to blow everyone's mind. Next year, come to training for sure. I mean, I say that every year, but I've been told there's a possibility that the whole RAMP application process will be online. So it would be to your benefit to be here to get some training on that. So.
And folder lovers will just finally be out of luck.
Sorry. Okay.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate you.